This is the final CTE workshop that we have scheduled to be here on site, but we do anticipate having some more offerings for spring that'll be oriented around professional development and engagement for all of us around teaching, but also in light of the new changes to our integrated MPH core especially. So with that in mind, we have our presenter today, Dr. Nate Carnes, who comes to us as the Associate Director for CTE, and also he is faculty in our College of Education.
Yeah, thank you.
All right.
Yeah, thanks so much. So also, I wear two hats. Also, I am a faculty member in the Department of Instruction and Teacher Education, and I'm kind of huffing and puffing because one of our big meetings is happening or coming to a close right now, and I had to sit and wait my time for our agenda because I'm also chair of the curriculum committee. So anyway, this is one of my favorite topics, but we're only going to be touching and scratching the surface. I know MPH is now in active learning has now found its way into our accreditation. Is that it, or has it always been there?
I think
We've always been oriented to active learning, but it's much more emphasized now by our accrediting body.
Yes. So I just want to say just a little bit about that in a moment or two, but not to belabor the point or to beat ourselves over the head. I mean, some things have happened historically, and it is what it is. It's just now an opportunity for us to make some changes. So now, with my CTE hat on, my badge prominently displayed, we're going to just touch base on some active learning. I would love to come back and do some more kinds of things on it because of how important active learning is. And I do want to anecdotally share some things I have heard from some students, undergraduates and undergraduates, targeted at no one, but just something for us to think about. Okay, so here's what I hope to accomplish in our short time is that one is to define active learning, okay, and all together there are 7 of us, so I want you to move closer to someone so that you're paired up for an activity that we'll do later on. But we're going to define active learning and then think of a way or plan, 8 now, to incorporate, to begin thinking about how we might engage our students or how we might engage our students more than what we do. Okay, so this is not like a deficit approach, okay? And then, whoops, it went down to 3. I should have fixed that. But to think about our teaching, and this is just, just a time for reflection. Once again, this is not to put people up in front of a firing squad, but just to kind of think about, where we are in our teaching. I know I'm always, I think about our teaching a lot, even when we have the flip meetings. It's like, so am I doing this? What does this look like in my class? And that's where I see opportunity for improvement. Okay? So with that, there's just a few of us, but I want to, I'm going to minimize this slide here for a little bit because I want to go to our first activity, speaking of activities, and get us involved in one aspect. First of all, I have a lecture to give, and I want you to take notes, listen very carefully, and then I want you to do an assessment at the end. All right, so, and once again, I'm limited to 1 slide on this, Ray. so pay attention, class. I'm glad to have everyone here today. Glad everybody has made it through what might be wet weather. Here's our topic for today. It's Traxaline. Listen very closely because this is going to be very important to you. I just want you to know. Is it on the test? This will be on the test. Yes, ma'am. This will be on the test. Absolutely. It counts 35% of your grade.
When is the test?
After the lecture. Okay, yes. Yeah, so here's our title for today. It's Traxylene. Specifically, we're talking about the montylation of Traxylene. I just want you to know that Traxylene is a new form of Zianter. It is montyled in Serostana. The Serostanians gristillate large amounts of fervon and then bracter it to quasyl Traxylene. Traxylene may be, well be one of our most leucized snazlos in the future because of our Zianter licenage. Okay? So with that, I hope that your knowledge has deepened about Traxylene, particularly the montylation of it. And before you leave, I want you to complete an assessment that is counting 35% of your grade. It is right before you. Everybody should have one. Be sure to put your names on it because sometimes I'm getting papers from you with no names. And I'm sure you want the credit. So at this time, please put your name on it and complete the assessment that is in front of you. I will go over this before we leave as well. Please begin. Okay, let's see how we are doing. What is Traxylene? Dr.
It is a new form of Zianter.
Okay, new form of Zianter. That's what you should have as your answer for your first one. Good. Okay, where is it montyled? Yes, sir.
Serostana?
Yes. Montyled in Serostana. Very good. Good. Now, how is it made? Go ahead, Ray.
Crystallization of fervon and then bractered to become quasyl.
Well, to quasyl. Well, be sure you know that it's to quasyl Traxylene. That's very important as well. Okay. Why is it important? Someone in the back?
Because of our Zianter, well, I don't know how to say it, Zianter licenage.
Oh, the Zianter licenage?
Uh-huh.
Can someone tell me more? I would say I would probably give partial credit to that.
Most
Leucized. Snazlos.
Yeah, actually that's, yes. The emphasis is that it's our most leucized snazlos. Okay? So I would say it does have to fit in with our Zianter licenage, but that is part of it, but there's the leucized snazlos is the more important one and a piece of it. Okay? All right. So I hope we've done well. Now you may see some of this information again because this was just a quiz for today. I will be collecting these to enter your grades in the grade book for today. But keep in mind we have a final exam coming up and you could see some of the same information on the final. So.
Are you going to post your slides?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I will post the slide. Hopefully I'll have enough time to do that, but it should be up before our next class meeting. All right? Okay, so we will move on from there. And I want to go back to our PowerPoint. Pull this up here in one moment. And well, this is where we were. Okay, so now I want to switch. That's all right. So that was case one. That's environment one. We'll come back to case one in a little bit. I want to go to case two. All right, so for case two, we're going to start at the beginning of the semester. This is our first semester, our first class meeting. Okay? All right, class. This is Public Health 701. Glad to see you here. I want to engage you in an activity here called alphabetic seating. And we'll talk a little bit about this as we complete the activity. I want you to just put everything down. There's a task I want the class to complete. We're going to seat ourselves alphabetically by your preferred name. So as you can see, your preferred name might be Alpha Aaron, Aaron being your last name, but we're going to do it by your preferred name, which is Alpha. Okay, and so Alpha will sit here. The next person in the alphabet will sit here. Third person in the alphabet will sit here. And then we'll fill up this one and on till we complete the seating. Does everybody understand the task?
1,
Okay.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
7.
We're putting ourselves in alphabetical order.
Now, everybody understand? Please begin.
Yeah.
You're right after us. Okay.
Well, I'm an R.
You're
Oh,
so we're gonna have a row of L's?
So who is after me?
We are?
It's you.
Yes.
Of course,
L-E-E.
yeah.
Okay.
And then Liz, you're before me.
Is it this?
Yeah.
I'm Lee Pearson.
So I'm here. Okay. No?
It's your first time?
First time.
Congratulations.
You could have just taken every word.
Okay, so we're going to take attendance now. We have Feifei, Lee, and then we have Liz,
Lucy.
then Lucy,
May.
May,
Ray.
and Ray,
Whitney.
and then Whitney. Okay, now, great. Looks like we've accomplished this. Now, I want you to think of a few questions. The first question I have is, which part of the alphabet was the easiest to see?
The L's were kind of easy because we had the most of those.
Okay, so since there were the most of them, it was the easiest to do.
Yeah, we kind of clustered together.
And
That
everyone
created-
actually.
That created an anchor for the room.
Okay, okay. Which was the most difficult?
Organizing the L's.
Back to the L's?
Back to the-
Because?
Well, because then we had to go to the next letter in our name, and then it got complicated.
All right. Now, here's a bigger question that I have, because this is, I want to set the tone for the rest of our semester. What did you have to do to accomplish this task?
Know the alphabet.
I didn't know
Know
that.
the alphabet.
Okay.
Only
and-
one person needed to know the alphabet. Everybody had to communicate.
Yeah, we all had to
Okay.
communicate.
All right, I'm hearing different answers. So I'm hearing we had to know the names, we had to know the alphabet. What did you say, Rick?
Communicate.
Oh, communicate. We had to communicate. Okay. So there's more than one response that you gave me. Is there a correct one or the most correct one?
What's the name? All of them.
All of them? No. Okay, I'm hearing knowing the name, but all of them are important. Okay. So we had to communicate in order to get this done.
Probably the most central.
Okay. What was your role?
Receiver.
That was-
Tell me more.
Well, communication requires a sender and a receiver. So
Yes.
I listened to other people and moved to the position that I felt that I would fall into.
Okay. Did you only receive?
No. But that was my primary.
Yes.
Your primary was to receive, and there were some senders.
Yes. facilitated a small coalition. The L's.
All right then. All right. Let's do this. Let's also think of this. How would you define your role in context of my role?
Participant.
Tell me more about participant.
So that involves communication
Okay.
and involves, communication.
Okay.
Getting the names and then,
We were following your direction.
follow the direction.
Follow my direction, but okay. And so your communication was with whom?
With each other.
Each other and you.
We
Okay.
received
How did you
your
communicate with me?
We received your instruction,
Yes.
and then we communicated amongst ourselves to complete the task.
Okay.
And then we reported back to you
Okay.
on the outcome.
Right.
That we got it right.
Okay. And yes, and I also checked. I checked.
We validated an assessment.
Okay. So class.
And we see.
Yeah, we
Yes.
gotta get up and down.
I got on that.
Yes. So you had to move around. All right. So class. This is why I want to impress upon you this semester. Okay. A lot of what we did in the alphabetic seating is what I'm expecting us to do throughout the semester. We hit communication more than once. We're going to have to communicate throughout the semester. You communicated with each other. I'm going to expect you to do that throughout the semester. Okay, you'll have to communicate. So in order for you to do that, you'll need to come to class prepared. So we're getting ready to go through the syllabus. But as we go through the syllabus, I want you to look at what we have to read, what we have to do to come prepared for class. Be sure that you do that because that's going to depend upon the quality of the class, just like the quality of our solution depended on us. We're all going to be involved. Okay? All right. End case 2. All right. So, yes. All right. So you can go back to your prior seats. Okay. All right. So now I want to. We went through 2 scenarios, kind of ridiculous ones, but I'm trying to make a point and also stay true to our topic. Has anybody noticed that I have not gone through the 1, 2, 3s, ABCs of active learning? Okay. And even before I started, one of us already noted that there were not a whole lot of slides there. Okay. Did you notice that I have not yet spent a whole lot of time of reading from the slides? Okay. All right, so let's go back and do a little debriefing. Like I say, this isn't like huge, a huge cognitive challenge, but I wanted to get at the obvious, though. What did you see different between the 2 classroom scenarios?
One was far more interactive. Case 2.
Involved interaction between the students, not with the front of the room, so to speak, or the content per se,
Mm-hmm.
but engaging.
Okay. Okay.
Required thought.
With both?
Both required thought, but in probably in a different manner.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, let's go back to track sling. Okay, I want to do a little more debriefing about track sling. How many of you honestly have a deeper knowledge of track sling?
I've at least heard of it now. So I have a familiarity with it that is deeper than what I brought into this session, but I don't necessarily know anything really of substance.
Did you get an A on your?
I did get an A and.
You did that. Good.
Mhm. I got all the answers correct.
You got all the answers good?
So my score does not reflect my ability to apply any real fundamental insight on this topic.
Okay, do you know what you're going to do with track sling?
No. I wouldn't know it if I ran into it. But I got an A, and that's all I'm worried about. Actually, I got an A+.
We only have a 4-point scale. Okay, yeah. I got you. Okay. Now, with what Lee is saying, does that sound familiar?
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay, how so?
Well,
How's
classic
it?
education patterns are to expose students to pieces of information and require them to spit them back out
Mm-hmm.
without analyzing, interpretation, digesting, or reflecting.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. What could we do to help you understand Traxeline better?
Show us a sample,
That would be nice.
unless it's radioactive. Then
Or
we don't know.
picture,
Right.
or picture.
Yeah. Is anybody visually stimulated here? Like me? I'm visually stimulated. And you can talk to me all the time, but I was like, yeah, but until I see what we're talking about, it's not going to make sense to me.
We could take a field trip to Sarastana
That's true.
and see how it is puzzled.
Right.
That would be interesting.
Yes.
Did you sign up?
It depends on how far away.
Yeah, wherever Sarasota is.
Link
Yeah.
his passport.
Yeah, yes.
Like a general comment. I
Sure.
mean, you started out by saying these were ridiculous, and I like to think that I tried to be engaging. But I mean, there were pieces of it that I thought, ooh, maybe I'll do that a little bit, because
Mm-hmm.
as an instructor, we come in with a level of knowledge, and there may be a lot of assumptions made between the interaction that we have with the material and the student, to think, oh, by the end of this lecture, this fabulous lecture that I'm going to give, surely you'll have a deeper understanding,
Mm-hmm.
right? Even when I add the bells and whistles. But that still may be limiting in a lot of ways, because I've taught it, I've maybe done research in a particular topic, so I've come to the table already with an advantage. So the expectation, even that with the best efforts made at communicating to students, the expectation that they'll grasp it in whatever the limited amount of time is, may also, be worth examining.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, how can you have students perform active learning if they don't have some sort of basis on which to then engage with? And so you have to have some sort of starting point, but I think the question becomes then, is it inappropriate to do anything like what was done with the Traxeline, but then after you present some base information, or students come to class prepared, then you can participate in more active parts of it?
Okay, I don't want to leave that point. I mean, let's sit there for a moment. Okay, so Ray, can you give me a specific example of where, look, I need to give some information first.
Well, just go back to the classes I teach. When I talk about the tissues, the students really have little idea about what a tissue is, let alone the fact that we have 4, and then multiple subcategories of each one and how they're broken down. So we have to go through and talk about how it's organized and what the names mean, and so on and so forth, before we can start talking about where we find them, what their application is, what their function is, make references to what they are familiar with.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. Now, coming into Ray's class, I've heard of tissue before I get to his class.
Kleenex.
Could it be?
I've heard of this shit.
Yes.
And we do talk about Kleenex, by the way.
Okay.
And that's not the kind of tissue we're talking about.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Okay. So here's the thing. Actually, I'm kind of getting into the reason for it, but we're looking at some practical things before I give another kind of like a piece of writing that talks about the importance of doing what we're doing here. And by the way, you can see I've kind of adjusted this presentation that it's just not a talking head presentation. there have been some opportunity to input or interact. Would you agree or disagree? Okay, now be honest with me. So would that make this session that we're doing now, is this, would you agree that this is maybe worth your time being here this morning versus me coming in? It's like, okay, I have a long PowerPoint and I'm going to go through it slide by slide.
It's certainly more enjoyable to have interaction. Less words on the slide
Okay?
and less slides.
I think everybody comes in with some sort of preconceived notion about what it is, to active learning.
Mhm.
And rather than giving us a strict definition or formal definition, you're asking us to perform the active learning.
Experience it.
Yeah. And some of that goes with the discomfort of it.
Mm-hmm.
Many students report that they don't like it because there's a measure of uncertainty,
Mm-hmm.
rather than you just giving them the fact for them to remember.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes you have to start slow.
Yes, we have to start slow, but go back to what Ray was saying about the tissue. When we're talking about tissue, here's the thing that this comes from cognitive science, is that we have far exceeded, gone beyond the realms of John Locke, who talked about the mind, he talked about tabula rasa, which is the mind is this empty slate. It's this perfectly clean slate. Students come to us and we write on the tables of their hearts what they need to know, and they know it because we told them. And actually, even in pre-college settings, we have teachers that say, they should know this. I said, why? I said, because I taught it. And I really spent some time on it, therefore they know it. And so there's this piece where brain science is becoming more and more appealing, important to us because of how the brain works. So when I come again to Ray's class, I might know what tissue is, but it might be unfounded. It might be a very naive conception of what tissue is. And so I'm going to then move, I know this isn't in the slide, but I was thinking about, this is going to be kind of organic. I was going to touch on some things. There's a team, Wong and Wong. It's a husband-wife team. Harry Wong and Rosemary Wong, they talk about uncovering material, which is so easy to say and hard to do. If we are really interested in engaging our students, active learning is the way to go, with in mind that what we hope to do is uncover the material that we teach. Now, being in the teaching profession for a while, I've heard cover for years and years and years. And so I assimilate it right in. It's like, what are we covering today? We got to cover this. And just listening to him, Harry Wong said, no wonder students aren't learning. We're covering the material. They can't see what we cover. We have to uncover. So it's more than semantics. It's something that we have to do. The way to uncover material, when you're uncovering material, I should have brought more props. Because the way to uncover is then to remove it, which changes my level of activity as an instructor so that the students then reach and grab, which means then they're going to be involved. Go ahead, Whitney.
Yeah, I had a question. One of the reasons I wanted to participate in this is some of the stuff that I will, in teaching and will teach is a little bit, it's not so much covering a content area as it is teaching a method or technical skills in research and things like that, which I feel like I struggle with making that active, whereas content, maybe you can engage students in a little different way to have discussions on a topic or something, but I struggle with that a little bit more when you're trying to teach them a research method or technical skills. I didn't know if, I mean, I hope it's not premature to ask, but there's a way that, you know, to make that a little more active so they're not, you know, their eyes aren't glazing over their, you know, I guess that's a question and maybe that's something you get to, or maybe, anyway, that's something I was interested in
Sure.
getting
Sure.
some thought, you know, advice or, you know, strategies for doing.
Sure. Okay, so I pared down, you know, because when we're talking about active learning, it's this big. And so, in a nutshell, I think what we ought to do is we have to consider the content. Now, you said something that's very important that I was saving for later, but since you made mention of it, what we're talking about now is not easy. And it's going to probably take us more planning time. Because with this, I mean, you all are content experts. You know, I have no fear about what you know. And can you deliver it? Yes, you can. Will I be able to learn from you? Absolutely. At the same time, the way in which you engage me is going to have a lot to do with what I leave with. And so what we have to do is look at the structures. What are we doing? And the very question that Whitney raised is one that I feel should be commonplace in our planning, when I'm planning. It's just that same thing. How am I going to engage my students? I'm going to share briefly 3 approaches. There are more, and maybe we need to expand on the 3 to see, well, what can I use right now, adopt right now in my classes. So I'm kind of glossing your question a little bit, but the question is, how can I involve my students? And I'm going to repeat this in a moment. Okay? So going back then, without overburdening us too much about the track sling. Okay, Lee here is he has prided himself with his A, and he's gone this merry way. I think I can make it through this class. I'll be fine. You know, I don't know half the stuff, but glad the questions, you know, aren't too difficult. Here's the thing. The students that we get are, many of them are test-wise. Okay, wiseness has to do with finagling, I'm being a little unprofessional here, but it's finagling their way through the academic hoops. You know, so what I'm going to do, for example, let's say in your lecture class, every now and then you might throw out a question, and you might say, Nate, I want you to answer the question. Well, here's what I'm going to do, because this is what I've learned in being successful. I'm going to start to answer the question, and I'm going to watch you as I'm answering the question. And when you start to like smile or nod, and you know, I've learned my teachers enough that I get the approval, the nonverbal approval, and so I keep going. And then I stop and say, good, Nate, that's very good. Oh, whew, made it through that one. And I do that on the test as well. Or before the test, I'm going to ask you some questions. See if this sounds familiar. Is this going to be on the test? Specifically, what do we need to know about tissue? Are you going to ask us to identify this tissue and this tissue and this tissue? Or, I mean, how's it going to be? Multiple choice? Is it going to be multiple choice? Or do we have open answer? So can you give us an example of multiple choice? Can you, well, for the short answer, exactly how long does it have to be? I'm running through a bunch of stuff. Does this sound familiar? Okay, they're really not working on learning material. They are working on raising their ability to be test-wise. Okay? And hopefully, your multiple choice are such that the obvious answer will become apparent to me when I look at it. Okay, which I know in Ray's case they're not. You see what I mean? And so actually what has happened is the level of student activity is questionable. And I'm going to put, just come forth. I mean, with myself, I have not always given attention to active learning like I have now. because I would look at things like good, and I was like, yeah, that sounds good. Or I look at something that's like, well, yeah, that's what I said. But what do they know? What do they understand? And so the active learning has to get to the point where we open it up till we get down to the depths of them being able to take the knowledge and not just take it in its form and it just sits there, but that they're able to manipulate it so that they can extend upon it and use it in different contexts, the appropriate contexts, wherever they may be. Okay? So that's what's so important about the active learning. Okay? So the Traxeline, then I think we can say that is a demonstration of traditional teaching that has not reached students well. And like I say, I've been guilty of this. I'll go through, and I used to have lots of slides, till one of my mentors came. It's like, why do you have so many slides? And I said, well, I have to get through all this. But what I found out was I was giving them my knowledge about certain things, and I don't know, maybe I had an ego. Possibly that was part of it. But see, active learning really is targeted for facilitating the student's learning and gaining from that and moving a bit away from what our knowledge is. That's what this is about, okay? And that is so important, so that when they leave here, they're able to say, well, I can apply this, or I can do some stuff with this because they were involved in the creation of it. When they're not participating in it, it's just our show that they're taking. So the accreditation standards that we're now looking at is trying to get us to move from that. There's another, okay. So let me say something about the seating arrangement and then go back to another rationale. So for the seating arrangement, we were actively engaged, right? And we said a lot of good things about it. Just know, also the knowledge came from you. This is what's sometimes a little uncomfortable to me. Sometimes, even in Whitney's case, it would be a little uncomfortable to me because I would imagine some of the procedures that you're teaching has some safety considerations in mind too. Do they? Maybe. Oh. Oh, okay. Okay. All right. Well. Yeah. But there's some ethical uses of the data. Yeah. Yeah. So I have to think and apprise them of. So what I'm going to do, this is going to take me more time because what I'm in my planning, because I'm going to now I didn't know exactly who all was going to be here, although I did see the list. But what if someone went by a different name? I got to allow for that, which is kind of like, what if someone brings in a different set of knowledge into my classroom that I didn't anticipate for? Still, it's kind of like the same issue. But also, the students were generating, and I provide evidence for them to generate knowledge. Okay, I mean, to use their knowledge that they brought. Okay? So, I probably should use my clicker. So, there's a, if, I don't know if anybody attended Oktoberfest? Anybody? Oh, Ray did. So, you remember the, I guess, lack of a better, the panel that we had? That we drew from the Horizon report. The Horizon 2017 report, which is now owned by EDUCAUSE. It focuses primarily on technology, but it has some pedagogical pieces in it that are appropriate for us. Basically, this is just one excerpt. So from the entire report, this contains a lot of the flavor. It's really drawn from some pedagogical approaches that we have been using at the pre-college level. We're just starting to see more of it at the university level. In fact, I was going through some literature, like I was looking for public health kinds of things to make this a useful gathering. And a lot of what's talked about in, using some of this language here, like project-based learning, problem-based learning, inquiry-based learning. Those kinds of things are now starting to come up in our literature, like 2016, 2017, 2018. So I think there's some things that we can learn from other contexts. Okay, so it's good to meet accreditation standards that we have. Also, this Horizon report, which actually seeks to capture the flavor of university teaching, is all throughout this report. And it's an ongoing report, so it is dynamic. This is just where we are now. Okay, I happen to ask some students who come into my class, and to my knowledge, for the most part, we don't share students. You and I, we don't. Okay, but I do get some from biology, chemistry, the other sciences, because I'm a science teacher educator. Is I ask them about some things, and they struggle. They struggle. For example, let's replace track sling, for example, with density. They've heard about density before, but they haven't grasped the concept of density. Exactly what is it? I mean, why does it matter? And we can talk about different densities in the body. We can talk about blood gases and those kinds of things. But they've heard things, and then what they do, they formulate their own perceptions and all, and they can move through our course undetected, unless we open up those avenues for them to address those. Keep this in mind. Here's another thing to keep in mind about active learning. Whatever we teach, if we could go, actually, I probably should have done that. It's like, what do you teach? But we'll try to customize in a little bit. Okay, whatever we teach, students come in with a certain mindset. It's either I have no clue about this, like track sling, have no clue of what we're learning in this course, or it could be, I have this perception, like I said before, of, well, I think I know what it is barely. But how can we grow students? And that's where the active learning does come in. Okay, so now with that, I want to, when we go to our planning, Whitney, let me know if this helps in any way. So when I'm sitting down to plan, whether I'm sitting at the computer doing statistics, whether I'm in your class and I'm going to demonstrate some of this knowledge in a lab that's coordinate my course, whatever it is, I would say, it is blank on purpose, but I would say using a T-chart like this, because if we drew the line all the way down, we would have a T, is think in terms of what I, the instructor, do and what my students do. The objective to this game, if you want to look at it that way, is that what the students do column is never zero. If that column is never zero, sans going into the literature, I am engaging my students in an active manner. The whole goal then is to do something in my class so that it is active. Okay? Just I want to check, see how we're doing on time. All right, so we move on from here. All right, so what I want then for us to do is look at, I'm just going to talk about some active learning strategies. I just pulled out 3. There are more. There are more. I was thinking about what can we use in our class. How many have heard of Think, Pair, Share? Okay, so most of us have, so some of us haven't. All right, so here's what I want you to do. Okay, how many have heard of Think, Pair, Share? 4. Okay, so it's 4 to 3. All right. So here's what I want us to do then. For the Think, Pair, Share, I want you to think about, if you know what think, pair, share is, I want you to think about how you would explain it to someone who doesn't know about it. For those of you who have not heard of it, I want you to think of what it might mean and what questions you would ask to help you know it better. Okay, you got a thought? Okay, we have 4 people who feel knowledgeable about it. We have 3 who do not. So I want you to find someone who feels that they know about think, pair, share. And that person will explain it to you, or the 2 people, because in one case we'll have 2 people. One will chime in with the other. And then we're going to come back together and see how well we've done. Does that make sense? Okay. Go ahead and pair it.
Somewhat like what you just did. Just walk through and then.
Okay, you both did, right?
Okay, I can.
Sorry, I know I've heard of it.
Okay. Go ahead.
So it's somewhat like we kind of just walk through like
Okay, I don't know.
where you thought about what can you think about it, if you know what it is. Think how you'd explain to somebody what's in class, what it is to think about what it would mean. So it's
Pairs,
questions, think about it.
Students?
Pair.
So pair,
Oh, just students.
Share your responses to
have a
that.
discussion, and then I guess you go share with your class. So it's a way
And then
to,
share level 2 is share level 3.
yeah, it's essentially what we're doing. Yes.
And I know you
So
probably
it's
do.
taking a question, pairing with somebody, discussing it. Topic probably that you talked about.
Yeah, I was
What's the first letter?
Okay. So we are going to move on. Oops, now I got to really turn it up a little bit. But well, one, do you see how the time passes when you're involved? Generally, if I'm involved, the class generally does not drag on, I would say. As a student, as a student, I'm less time, I'm going to pack up my book bag, and about 2 minutes before dismissal, I might be involved in the topic. Okay, so anyway, where are we with our knowledge about think, pair, share? Okay, let's summarize it so that we all are as as best we can be on one page.
We were just doing it.
Yeah,
Yes.
and it can be between students or between the mentor and students. So anyone, and then, yeah.
Yeah, it can be. Now, the way it's designed to be among students, just like with the alphabetic seating. Did anybody notice what I was doing as the instructor for the day?
They weren't doing your jobs. You weren't teaching me anything. You didn't tell me what I was supposed to do.
Yeah, I wasn't teaching. Except, unless you have a broadened perspective on teaching. Okay? Because this is where my rich teaching comes in. It's actually in another piece of literature, but there's one scholar who calls this wayside teaching, which means you're kind of like the guide on the side rather than the sage on the stage, the sage on the stage, kind of thing. Think, pair, share is just what it says. Okay? All right, so Ray said we did it. So what did we do?
Thought about it, prepared.
Okay, yeah. The instructor, this is one, I thought we would start with this one because this is one that you can make just a subtle shift. Because I can use my lecture, but at different points in my lecture, I'm going to stop and I'm going to throw out something. For example, I might say, all right, I want you to, I'm going to stop at this point. I want to see what you understand about X. Whether it's a procedure, whether it's a piece of content, whether it's a concept. I'm just going to stop and say, all right, I want you to think about what did we just discuss? What's the point of it? I asked you 2 questions there. I want you to just think about it. Now, I want you to share with the person sitting next to you. If you're not sharing, well, I might even move my class around a little bit because, you know, they come and they sit wherever in a lecture, let's say. You know, you might just say, we're going to be doing something different today. I want you to be sitting next to a person, whether you know them or not. Sometimes I change it up. I want you to sit next to a person with whom you don't normally interact because I'm trying to build community in that case. Okay? And then the sharing is on, whoops, there should be a dash between pair and share. So for the sharing, that's the public kind of thing. Now, I don't want to dwell on this too much because of our time, but one thing that I have found personally in my class, I mean, I could go to literature, but I prefer to use, I mean, I've been through this, is one, I find that students become more engaged. Would you call this active student learning?
Yes.
Why?
They're actively engaged in the learning process.
How are they engaged?
They're interacting.
Yes.
They're challenging each other in their thinking and helping to shape and reform their thinking.
Yeah, so if I go back to my chart, it's more than 0. So they are involved. This is, and I might say, okay, whatever content it is, make sure you thoroughly discuss it because I'm going to select one of you to stand in my place and summarize this part of my lecture or whatever. Oh, raises the stakes a little bit. Okay? Or we're going to have some questions and I want you to be able to answer them to the best of your ability. Yes, you may use your partner as a lifeline, whatever. We've also found that this has drawn in reticent learners in that, you know, well, if I'm sitting beside this person who is pretty sharp, you know, I mean, Lucy, in my opinion, she's the smartest one in the class, and she agreed with my response. So I'm going to feel more confident. I'm going to feel more confident, right? And so that helps in a way too. So it has an affective as well as an academic impact on them. Okay, so we got to get on here real quickly. So line activity. Let me go to the line activity. Okay, so every now and then I'm sitting and I'm planning, and some of what I teach has some controversy in it. So if, I don't know if this is going to be helpful, Whitney, or not. But if, for example, let's say there's some statistical procedures that have some murkiness about it, you could use the line activity. Now, I didn't want to just talk about it, but because of where we are and how few we are. See this string? What I do is even in my larger classes, I may take this string and stretch it across the entire classroom. Because students are coming in, why the string? Because we're going to use it. And so what I will do, I will pose a provocative question that's based on our reading. It's like, well, y'all, instead of lecturing about our topic today, I want you to help me understand how this matters. And sometimes it's something dry. Sometimes it's something really, you know, that really has some pricklies to it, like evolution. I do this for my, in my high school science methods course. It's like, okay, I run the string the entire length of the room. I say, okay, here's what I'm going to, I have a question. And I want you to position yourself. My question is, should we teach creationism and evolution in my biology class? Should I do that or not? Our reading assignment, by the way, was Nature of Science. And I'm going to see where they position themselves. Here it is. And also, on one side of the room, I have absolutely not posted. And on the other side, I have absolutely. And so what I do, I say, the closer you stand represents the strength of how you feel. Okay? If you are not unsure or you're not, you know, you can go either way, the best you can do, if you're dressed appropriately, you can straddle the line. You know, so, and if there are people with skirts on that, that would be problematic. So you can touch the line. You either touch the line or straddle the line. And so then when they do that, I said, all right, I said, okay, go ahead and position yourself. Then, after they position themselves, I said, all right, I'm going to select different individuals, and I want you to provide a rationale for why you're standing there. As much as is possible, draw from the reading assignment. Do you see any active engagement in that? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm now asking you all. Do you see any active student engagement in that or activity? Okay, now the students are physically moving, but they're all also active in their, and I'm sure there are some topics you all can come up with in your various classes, because there's lots of, And so and so what that does then, they now are using what they're thinking to justify, and I'm standing here with my knowledgeable self. I might be prompting with questions, and here's what I have found happen, is that people who are standing at different parts, they start asking questions and all. And then we even say, all right, now we're at this point in the discussion. Let's pause. You may reposition yourself if you so choose. Now, at times it happens, especially when we're talking about creationism and evolution. And then I say, what's the rationale for why you moved? You. And so now I'm engaging students, and I'm coming about this knowledge I would have presented in a lecture in a different way. They're involved in it. Okay? Whole brain teaching. Whole brain teaching is another piece that we can use, or another active learning strategy. This whole brain teaching, and notice I didn't write all this out, because I say, if I wrote all this out, why would I tell you anything? I would just say, read what I handed out. Okay, that's another thing that we might want to think about. What is it that we want to keep so that we can, include our expertise or some insight into, and then whatever's posted is what students can glean from. I got this because my students, when they came to the classroom, I talk to them a lot of times, and they said, one thing that they do hate, they hate when a lecturer gives them exactly what's in the PowerPoint. Like, duh, I can read, and that's how someone have responded to me.
So how do you counter that with, I want the slides, or can you post the slides? Because I have heard both.
Okay, I would post these slides at your request, but where are the golden nuggets?
Yeah.
Where's the elaboration? It's got to be with us.
I think giving the students the slides is more of a comfort thing.
Yes.
They think you care about them more than anything
Oh,
else.
okay. Not that they feel comforted by.
Because my slides are for me, that's how I know what I'm
Right.
going to go through.
Well, but particularly if you have a course that doesn't have a textbook or supplemental material, the students tend to rely on the slides. And I get usually dinged because I don't like a lot of content on my slides. And I like, to break them up and have images or discussion questions or bullet points. And they're like, but I'm going to have to write all that down.
Right.
And I'm like, yeah.
Right.
And hopefully,
That's called paraphrasing.
Right. So real quickly, I need to work on my time management here. So real quickly, whole brain has a lot of different pieces to it, and it can sound cheesy, and it may not be for you, but I thought I would present it just in case, just who you are, is you have to sell it if you want them to buy it, though. There are different pieces to it. The simple one is where I want everybody's attention. And here's how I get everybody's attention. When I say class, I want you to say yes, class.
Yes.
Okay, now, let's take it up a little bit. When I say class, I want you to say
Yes.
exactly, only got one, exactly the way I say class. Class. Class.
Yes.
Class.
Yes.
class.
Yes.
Okay, we're just practicing. So, that way when I say class, yeah, give it back to me. All right, now I want you to include all of me when you do it. So when I say class,
Yes.
okay, and this is why I teach my students this way, you know, to get them oriented. It's like, he's got to be kidding me. Yes. And do it. And so then I'm starting to engage them. I'm doing a lot of the talking, but I didn't pause. And every now and then I break it up, like about every 3 minutes or so, because the human mind has an attention span. And so I throw that class in there every now and then. And sometimes I said, like in this class, and someone says yes. And I said, and I applaud them because I want you to catch every time I say the word. Now, class. There's another piece to it. The other is much like think, pair, share, but a little different. It's called teach, okay. And you can substitute those two words also. You can also substitute class like with a biological term or, yeah, that you want to stay in their mind. You can use that as your key and not class. Okay, so here's another one. Teach, okay. Teach, okay, much like think, pair, share, is I am going to go through a mini lecture because I'm not sure that you can get it any other way, so I'm going to have to lecture to you. But I'm going to break it up this way. I'm going to go ahead and do my mini lecture. Mini lectures in this whole brain teaching is to be no more than 3 minutes. You got to time yourself. No more than 3 minutes. And so you stop at 3 minutes, say, class.
Yes.
Okay, everybody with me? Class?
Yes.
There we go. All right, so when I say teach, you say,
Okay.
okay, exactly the way I say teach, and I want you to name the 2 strategies for whole brain teaching that I just gave you. Are you ready?
Now it's getting complicated.
And then you say teach. They say, okay, exactly the way you say teach, and then give the information to your partner. Because I up it, because I'm working with people who are going to be teachers, and so I say, what I want you to do, I want you to do it with enthusiasm and with gestures. Because that matters in teaching. I mean, you can adopt that if you want to, but you don't have to. And then you have them do that. So with our time, I would love to come back and talk more about whole brain teaching because there's more to it. For example, can I throw this one in real quick? I know we're on time. So one is gestures. And gestures, you're just going to pay attention to me. But what I want you to do is just follow whatever I do, I want you to do. So as I'm talking and as I'm lecturing, I'm going to make a powerful point. Okay, oh, you guys aren't gesturing. I want you to gesture. Okay? Okay? So, when we're going through all of this, whatever distracts you, put it away. Okay? So now, you got to stay with me. And sometimes, just little things like that gets them actively involved and to pay attention to me. Then they say, oh yeah, so when he was talking about the different cell types, that's when he was going like this. Remember? When he was doing that? See, that's now becoming mnemonic to stick with me. All right? So, I think that's...
Is that a gesture or
Yes.
I have a question, and I know you're trying to wrap up, but
Mhm.
one of the things
I mean, my time is your time. So I
well,
just have to
one of the things that I would love for us to chat about in the remaining time, if we can, is how do we engage our students and keep them engaged while we are combating numerous distractions? Because it is rare that you have a student in a class now that doesn't have a laptop in front of them or a cell phone like I've been trying to navigate, or they're either watching something or doing something that is ancillary to class. And no matter how entertaining you may be, or how many jokes you tell, or how many hand gestures you have, they're navigating their social media while they're listening to you.
Mm-hmm.
And that, I've had to learn that it isn't necessarily a sign that they're disengaged.
Mm-hmm.
Because with this generation, they're used to kind of dividing their time and interest. but it's hard to adjust to that. And I normally teach at the graduate level, and it's less of a problem at the graduate level, but I taught an undergrad class last year, and it was like working at Best Buy. When I work out of the class, all I saw were 32 laptops. And it was very difficult to keep them engaged. And some of them, a handful of them, were actually using their laptops to take notes. Most of them were not. And I could tell because they would laugh at a point when I wasn't telling a joke. So whatever they were watching on their laptop was entertaining. And that's not to say that they weren't good students or that they weren't in some fashion absorbing the material, but I was really challenged to find ways to keep them engaged in the process. And I used a lot of different tactics. I had them, they all had nameplates, they all had table tents, so I knew their names. And I told them that they looked disengaged or disinterested, they would be the first person that I called on. And that usually kept them on their toes a little bit, but it's still, it's wonderful to have these strategies and getting them up and about and moving around and interacting, but they don't like that either because then they've got to unplug their laptop or make sure it's put away, and they're all trying to sit near the side wall because that's where the outlets are. So there are a lot of practical things that are happening in the classroom that make this challenging. So just wondering if that is something that you're navigating or that you have any advice for us.
Well, actually, a couple of things come to mind. They're not on the slide here. I have a colleague. I don't see how anybody can fall asleep in his class or be disengaged. Because what he does, Lee here might be asking about this question, and what he does, he looks around, he's like, keep going, because Ray is going to have an answer to your question. And Ray is trying to decide whether he's going to go to 5 points this weekend or chill out, And but now that I've called him on and said, or it could be Whitney or any, name some other people, and so it's like, oh, my number's coming up, and rather than him answer my question, he's going to have a colleague of mine answer the question, and that puts him on notice. And he does that, but he's like rapid fire. I wish he would give me permission to do a video of him. I stopped in his class a few times and seen him. And people are not doing that because they know everybody's game. And some people he calls on, it's like, you seem like you're drifting away from our class meeting. And so you're game. And now that they know that, and so people's like, this is not worth it. Now, on the other hand, it took me a few semesters to learn this, but I had some people who doodle. And what I found from them was that was how they kept in line. And for some of those doodles meant something. First of all, it's like, no way, this can't be right. And actually, my youth, that's like, so tell me about our class. And actually what she did, she's like, well, and she used different parts of her doodle to show me how all this was fitting together for her. It's like, you've got to be kidding me. And I actually did something special for her. I forget what I did. But I remember her, but she's like, well, thank you for doing that. I was like, no, thank you. You contributed to my learning. And she thought that was like, wow, professors learning? I didn't know that could happen. But, so sometimes that can happen. But other times it's where we have them actively keep them active. The other thing is, which is... Pardon?
We're at 11.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Just want to let folks who need to go.
Yeah. Okay, let me make this real quick. Thank you. So one other thing that is uncomfortable is for whatever, at any point in time, you can have them turn and have their laptops face you. I have a very important point for you to make. I have a very important point I want you all to grab a hold of. Turn your laptops and face me.
So what you're testing is do they do the keystrokes to change the screen?
They'll have the escape key real quick.
But do you see what I'm doing?
Well,
See, I'm getting ready to...
a mirror at the back of the room. I'd rather have
Yeah.
that just so I can see all of your laptops. So just be
Yeah, but I mean, this is what we've used at the high school and in some of our lower level courses. Is when the instructor's going to make a very important point, turn your laptops and have them face me. Because I'm going to say, well, I'm taking notes. I'll give you a moment to take notes after I make this point. Turn your laptops face me.
Well,
And then, of course, if I'm doing this periodically, my folks are going to kind of like be careful about where their attention is, because at any point in time, that laptop's going to turn around. I don't want you to see that as it was the case in one of my classes, I don't want you to see that I'm watching the World Soccer Championships while you're talking. Well, actually, in my class, I have a timer because I get so engrossed in what I'm doing that
yeah, I put a student in charge of the time.
Yeah, that's why.
So Lucy's in charge of when we take our break today, and then Ray's going to remind us when we have 10 minutes left before the end of class.
That's like pre-kindergarten strategy.
Yeah, and it empowers them. And then, I'm like, and they have the privilege to interrupt me and say, you know, sorry you told me to interrupt you, but it's time to take our break. And I'm like, that is wonderful, Lucy, and we are ready for our break.
Yeah, that's great.
So that way they know that they're not worried that he's going to drone on and we're never going to get out of here.
Yeah.
So they always know they're going to get out.
And an opportunity to stretch it even further. Can I offer up something that I've done with the distractions that I'm sure I learned from somebody else is instead of trying to combat the phones, engage them using their phone. So having questions or points in the lecture where I'm saying, okay, use your device to, respond to this.
Yeah,
Not necessarily doing I know people have been even more advanced in doing the polling and things like that, but just even Googling.
Yeah, well that's what I had in the undergrad class when I would find students that weren't paying attention. And I'd call them and they'd be like, I don't know. And I'm like, in other words, I wasn't paying attention. I'm like, well, this is the topic, and does your laptop have the internet? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, well, then you're going to look up the answer, and we're going to wait. And this time is now on you. And so then they had to look it up, and they have to explain to the class what it is that we were talking about. So it does, kind of shift the balance, but it's so hard to combat the technology. And I know that's moving into more so to the graduate students as this generation of students moves in.
Yeah, that's kind of moving into a behavior management domain of what we have to do. And I think, I'm just looking around the room, I'm thinking that we have to do more of that than what we have been accustomed to doing in the past. But if I have someone who does that repeatedly, I schedule a conference with them. It's like, I want your money, or whoever's money is paying for this course, to be used well. So help me out. What can I do to get more of your time?
Well, one of the aspects of the team teaching model that we're trying to apply in the core is that other instructor, if they're the observer at that moment, doesn't have to be at the front of the class. They can be at the back of the class, so they're looking at all the laptop screens. So that introduces a little accountability there as well.
I've always argued that those people take themselves out of the running if they're not paying attention in class. And at some level, they're adults. They have to be responsible for their own actions. We can't decide everything for them.
They can, but you know what? One thing we can do, though, is help them make some connections to the field. Because I found that I've had to do that more, to say, look, we're not just eating up time here so that you can have 3 credit hours or whatever. This is what people out in the field told me that they're expecting us to know.
And it is a delicate balance, to your point. These are all adult learners, whether they're undergrad or grad. But what I find is it creates an imbalance in the classroom, because the person that's really watching the latest Netflix show or whatever, they're not participating in discussions, so it becomes this handful of individuals that are carrying the discussion. So I tend to try to bring them in and say, well, Ray, we haven't heard from you yet. What are your thoughts on this? And how is that?